The Sports Source is brought to you by Fast Frame, with exciting Vol sports prints now available.
You are watching East Tennessee's first and only year-round sports talk show on television. This is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Sports Source, year 14 of our football coverage here on the Sports Source. Happy to have you with us. Tennessee with the 20-13 overtime win against Appalachian State. Hey, look, you got the win, but it was close. How close? These were starting to sell in Knoxville on Thursday night. That's how close. How close? UT actually called up the folks that made their wristbands with the motto. Oh, we had the joke and it's ruined. Oh, well. Glad I sat up and worked on that last night. What I'd done, it's so funny. You can cut back to me now since we can't get a simple graphic to work. What I had done was taking the Own It rubber band and put two letters on there. Blown It. Would have been a classic. Anyway, if you're wondering how in the world we've made it through 14 years, that's how. We do have a packed show for you today, tons of VFLs and everything else. Let's get right into it. First segment of our show brought to you by Tennova Healthcare. They do an outstanding job in terms of men's health, and September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. So be sure to check with your doctor about whether or not it's time to get a PSA. 1 in 7 men will have to deal with it. And if you do what I did, do what my father did. Tennova Healthcare. Trust them. All right. I want to welcome in the first round of group of panelists here. We got Bob Hodge. We got Will Overstreet. We got Jimmy Himes. We got Daniel Hood. And we got a bunch more to rotate through in this show. I don't want anybody to think that I'm full of it. So let me show you. We do a new Thursday show over on Fox 43. Here's what we said in the first 2 minutes of that show. If you win this game 14-13, people will grumble now. If you win your next 11, no one's going to care that you won this one 14-13. Just win it and keep your guys healthy. Yeah, so this isn't new. That's true. Said that on Thursday. I think it is true. You do have to look at it and say, better to learn from a win than learn from a loss. That said, why was it so bad, gentlemen? I'm going to steal this question that somebody called in when we were on with you, Jimmy, on Friday on WNML. Tennessee overconfident? Tennessee overrated? Or where is the line in between the two, guys?
The line in between the two is I don't want to be overconfident in saying they were overconfident. I'm a little bit worried about this team now. I think that the way they came out and played, I mean, yes, it's Appalachian State. Yes, it's a Sun Belt Conference, et cetera, et cetera. But, boy, you look at some of the individual players and how they played on the defensive line. You look at the offensive line as a whole, and it's just hard to say, overconfident, they'll be okay.
Really is, especially the first game of the year. It's not like you have anything to overlook or not be ready for. It's your final chance to really show and kick off a season you've been waiting for a long time, and you go out and you lay an egg. I mean, basically, that's what you saw on this team do, is just absolutely play one of the worst games I've seen this group play in effort, in technique, and ability. You were not the most physical team on the field. Appalachian State took it to you for the entire time. The only thing they didn't win in is on the scoreboard.
Look, I think overconfidence, I don't want to chalk it all up to there, but you're right, it's opening game. You should be fired up. You look around the nation this weekend, Michigan State struggled with Furman. Florida looked terrible for 3.5 quarters yesterday against UMass. It wasn't just Tennessee. I'm not trying to defend them. But I think I think it's simple even for your first game. I think you can be overconfident, especially if you spent the entire offseason being told, you're going to go to the playoffs. Jimmy, your thoughts, overconfident or overrated?
John, I think as usual it's a little bit of both. I'm going to lean a little bit more toward overconfident, and the reason is I thought Tennessee's game plan was that way. I thought part of the game plan was not to run Dobbs. Don't need to run him, can win this game without it, go conservative with this. And defensively, I didn't see quite as much moving around and blitzing as I thought I might. So I thought Tennessee came in a little bit more vanilla, which to me tells me I think they were a little bit more overconfident.
I think that's exactly where I said. When I watched the game, in the first quarter, first half, really, you look at the team, they're not doing a lot of the things that got them there. Like when we switch in between quarters, one of Coach Jones' staples, run from one side of the field to the other. Guys weren't doing it. So the effort wasn't really there in the first half, but then I think it goes back to, again, I just felt like you're watching them and they looked handcuffs. You know, I didn't get to see one pass route because Coach Jones has his favorite route. I didn't see it once last night. You know, the one time we throw the ball down the field deep, we really get we had the completion and we had the interception for a touchdown. And so I think that's where I side. They just felt like they were playing handcuffs, trying to win a game.
And that's still no defense for players going out there. I think the coaches thought they could win with one hand behind their back, but I also think the players thought they could roll their helmets out. You can't tell me they didn't hear all this talk all summer long. So I think that's not an excuse for them. You know, overconfidence in some ways just as bad as overrated. All right, let's talk about the one area that I'm afraid wasn't confidence because they never bowed up, for lack of a better term. Yeah. The offensive line struggled all night. People have said, well, they didn't improve. Take a look at this. They not only didn't improve, they didn't need to improve. They ran for 2,900 yards last year. They took a step backwards. These are the yards per rush attempt for Tennessee last season. All right? The only team, and then you see down there at the asterisk, this was Appalachian State, 2.9 yards per carry is all you averaged. Only Oklahoma last year held you to comparable numbers. This was a real step backwards for that offensive line. Coleman Thomas, ankle injury. How much that played a role? Good question. How worried are you about this offensive line?
I think that's the situation of your first question of overconfident, overrated. How bad is this offensive line with the injury? Because if my ankle wasn't hurt that bad, then you're looking at this game thinking an entirely different situation because number 51 for Appalachian State looked like the reincarnate of Warren Sapp. And so I definitely think in this game, you're really worried. If that's the offensive line we have going in against the SEC play, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I think it's a huge worry. And I remember Bob saying he was worried about the offensive line, and I said, I'm more worried about the tackles. Well, now I'm more worried about the offensive line because I didn't think the guards played very well. Coleman Thomas has some type of an ankle injury. I don't know the significance or the severity of it, but I thought that was the worst game he played at center, and I got to think that ankle injury was a part of it. So I have great concerns about this offensive line from the ability to run and pass protect.
Daniel, I was getting texts all night long from former Vols who were on the offensive line. They were not happy. Two things stood out to them. One is expect every team from now on to put a nose tackle right over Coleman Thomas' head for the rest of the year until they prove they can deal with it. And I will say this, he didn't play that badly last year. So that makes me think maybe it was the ankle. The other thing that the players were upset about, he got no help. I mean, the guards weren't there to aid him in any way, shape, or form. Your thoughts on how Coleman Thomas was left out there on an island?
That's kind of what I was looking at. That's what I felt about it, is that he didn't really have anyone to help him. In O-line, you have to have guys there to help you, and that's why you got 5 to block 4. Right. And I mean, it's just the staple of offensive line play. You got to help your guy out in order to get it done, and we weren't helping out. So I'm not ready to sell him out just yet, just because, again, I think the biggest improvement you'll make is from game 1 to game 2. And I think we ran a lot of 2 tight end sets, but we also didn't run a lot of the plays where we're pulling that, the center and off guard that we ran a ton of last year. So how much of it is, we're still handcuffing them in the fact of we're not running our full offensive scheme. We got 2 tight ends in there. They don't know how to block in that set. So I'm not sold. I'm not concerned about it yet, but next week maybe.
And did you not pull Coleman Thomas because of the ankle? Was that a part of taking out some of the game plan?
Bob, 20 seconds on the offensive line.
Offensive line, he was talking about pulling guards. I watched a guard try to pull one time, and he never even got close to getting there. And to me, he wasn't a guy with a hurt ankle either. And so that's worrisome to me that Tennessee looked less athletic, not just played poorly, but looked less athletic than they did last year.
Which means, well, here, I'll start it. And I said, just give it a couple weeks. People will start saying, well, you do have the new strength and conditioning guy. So there, I officially uncorked that one. One to watch. All right, when we come back, we'll play a new game. In a word, how do you sum up Bob Shoop's debut? How do you sum up how the coaches use Josh Dobbs? And results around the SEC. We got a ton of information for you. Come on back on the Sports Source.